Hello, mates. It's Thrive Nation, all about holistic law and family and divorce law. I've got an incredible guest on the show who's written a book called Live, Laugh, and Find True Love. She is an attorney and her name is Sarah Intelligator. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Brilliant. Our audience has just started listening. So the first question is, Sarah, for you is, now they've started listening, they've heard about holistic law, which is quite a new concept that I've never, ever heard of. So that's why I wanted you to have on the show, because I think it's incredible what you're doing and the patterns that you recognized and the algorithms that you put down in your book. But why should people carry on listening to the podcast right now?
Because I have a lot of really amazing stuff to say.
Brilliant. But tell us about all these, your book, Live, Laugh, and why did you write it?
So kind of to your point about holistic law and what it is, that kind of segues into the reason I wrote the book. When I started my practice, I worked for a firm for many years, and then I went out onto my own, and I thought it was a very soulless, soul-crushing job to practice family law. It really took its toll on me. And I taught yoga I've been teaching yoga for over 20 years. And when I went out onto my own, I wanted to differentiate myself from all the other attorneys out there. And I realized that the way that I had practiced was very informed by my yoga teaching. And that, I have this tool bag where I can use these modalities to guide people to a place of calm and a place of guide them through difficult situations and processes. So I realized what I'm doing is it's a very holistic approach, in a sense that I'm looking at the whole person and the whole situation. And I'm doing more than just, taking their money and getting the paperwork done and things like that. I'm really concerned with the human being and the human experience that's so intrinsic to the divorce and family law process. So that sort of morphed for me, the meaning of holistic into, well, if I can guide people through their divorce and try to get them to a better place when they leave my office than they were and when they first came in, maybe I can get to them before they even set foot in my office. And so that was the impetus for writing this book, is to get to people before they set foot in my office so that they never set foot in my office.
Wow, that is absolutely profound and just incredibly valuable to society, because I just think, our communities, our partners, our life partners are so precious. And unfortunately, as you know, 50% probably divorce rate in South Africa and the US as well. And it's a tragedy. And I think, having been, looking at your book, and you've been an attorney for so long, you've now realized the patterns that lead people to your office, where they've come to you and said, hang on, what's going on now here? We really want to, sort this out. They don't know much about, why they got into this marriage, often, like you've said in your book. And here you are, not a medical practitioner, but a holistic law practitioner, looking at these patterns and trying to prevent divorce and try and enrich marriages or partnerships. And I think it's pretty profound. So we've got a pillar at Made to Thrive called community, and the multiple communities in your life, from your spouse to your kids to your friends, close friends, work colleagues, and then people out there that even connect with you on social media. But why are community sort of relationships and that so important to human thriving?
They have the power to enhance one's life, but they also have the power to make one's life miserable. So to the extent that they have the power to push you to be the best version of yourself or to enhance your existence, why not choose a partner who will do that, as opposed to choose a partner who will lead you to anxiety, depression, possibly even suicidal ideations. I've seen that in bad relationships where people feel trapped, like they can't get out. It can be very devastating.
Yeah. And as an attorney, I mean, you've probably seen some ugly and like really horrible and nasty things that comes out of people. Is that sort of maybe one of the reasons, so that you can get people? Because I love the sort of secondary meme on the book is just help me, a step-by-step guide to dating and finding a meaningful relationship. So not only are you trying to, help people that are maybe in the divorce process or prevent that, but trying to help people find the right partner or find the right relationship, because I think that's important. And we'll go through the nitty-gritties. But is that the impetus of the book as well?
Yes. So essentially I'm reverse engineering relationships. I'm saying this is what you shouldn't do, because this is where people go wrong. And this is what you should do to go right, based on avoiding the mistakes of others. And I don't like to refer to them as mistakes per se, because I think that every mistake, quote unquote, is an opportunity to grow and to learn. And in that regard, it can be a wonderful thing. But just meaning, where relationships go wrong, and to try to warn people. It's a didactic.
Sure. So it's for people that are looking for a partner. I see my son's 19 years old, and he's committed to business, and he's busy studying as well, and he's running a successful business. But this would be a book that I want him to have a look at and go through sort of your 6 pillars that are so important to help him choose a future partner wisely, to take some time. Because like you said in the book, and maybe you want to elaborate on this, many people don't do a proper due diligence. It's all infatuation, and it's all pheromones, and it's all physical attraction, and maybe common interest like going to the movies. But that doesn't really cut it, does it?
It doesn't. It's so much more complex than that. And it's really difficult because obviously we are attracted to what we are attracted to. And some of those attractions are sort of inexplicable to us. They're almost these invisible forces. And yet dating needs to be approached very critically in many ways. And with self-awareness and intelligence, as opposed to just giving in to all these butterflies and wonderful feelings, all of which are great and good and things that we should feel and experience, but they're not enough.
Yeah. So your target audience is actually someone who's looking to find a spouse or a future partner. That's number one. But 2, if someone's going through a difficult sort of marriage now, can they pick up the book as well? I mean, I know you had some incredible initial testimonials done by some psychologists and, communication specialists in the beginning of the book, Dr. Saltzman, which I thought was incredible. So kudos to you on this book. It's been an incredible read. But is it also for someone who's out there who's really struggling with their marriage to pick up the book and read it?
It can be. I think it's helpful in the sense that the book really pushes the reader to reflect on his or her relationship. It's not intended necessarily for someone who is in an existing marriage, unless they're maybe contemplating leaving the marriage. Mainly because I say this, not because I don't think it would be helpful. I do. I just don't think that the book it's not like, oh, you're going to read this and suddenly you're going to save your relationship. You might read this and you might say, this is not the right relationship for me, and maybe I should get out of it. Which I'm not, certainly encouraging anyone to go out and get divorced, but sometimes divorce isn't a bad thing. I myself am divorced. I'm remarried now, and I was just in the wrong relationship with a very wonderful human being, but now I'm in the right relationship with a very wonderful human being. So sometimes it's not a negative thing, but I'm not encouraging anyone to get divorced.
Brilliant. I know the book's only coming out in November pretty soon. When is the release date, just so that we can...
It comes out November 28th. This is the book right here. It comes out November 28th. And it's available, everywhere books are sold, essentially.
Brilliant. But what about telling us the story? Because, I mean, obviously people haven't read the book. It hasn't come out. But maybe give us a couple of stories of, some of these principles, and we'll get into the principles. But just give us an overarching view, a stratosphere view of using some of these, and an incredible story of, people, thriving more because they've applied some of these principles in a marriage or in a partnership that have really helped them understand, because awareness is so important to understanding one another. That affects your communication, and it affects how you listen as well. So give us a couple of stories of just things that you've used that have helped, spouses and marriages break through certain sort of situations and circumstances.
I don't think, I just want to be clear that, I haven't really helped any marriages. I'm here to pick up the pieces when they get to that point. But I I think helped a lot of people get to the point of selecting the right life partner, and which then results in marriage. And the way that I think that needs to be approached, I mean, as you mentioned, there are all these factors that I go through in painstaking detail in the book, and I give examples of why they're important and how to implement them. And there are exercises in the book for guiding the reader to recognize his or her own patterns and things of that nature. But the first, I break down the patterns into something called F words that I know we're going to get into a little bit later. But to your point, the first F word is fundamental values. And while the rest of the F words are in no particular order of importance, they're all equally important in my opinion. Fundamental values is first because it is the most important. And I think most people, as you mentioned earlier, they enter into relationships because they think that they have shared interests, or, they both like going to the movies, like you said. That's not a fundamental value. A fundamental value is something that it defines you. It's the essence of your being. It's something that you so value that it was important to you when you were young, and it will continue to be important to you well into your, old age. And, a lot of people don't know their own fundamental values, or they know them, but they haven't taken the time to really contemplate what they are and define them, say them out loud for themselves. And so in turn, when they're dating, they're not looking for a partner who shares those fundamental values. Well, why are these fundamental values so important? Well, if they are your kind of guide of how you live your life, and it's just so important to you, this is what you value so much, they're going to very much dictate the way you do lead your life. And so it's important to find a partner who fundamentally values similar things, so that you will navigate your lives together in a very similar way. You'll set goals in a similar way. You'll set to achieve those goals in a similar way. And so I think that the success stories that I've seen are when people identify their fundamental values for themselves, and then they go out and they look for a partner who shares those values, and they find that partner, and they lead a life together, fundamentally valuing very similar things. So they can value different things, of course, but at their core, there are 3 to 5 things that they value so much, like family or religion or whatever it might be. And so they lead their lives in a similar way, and it's very harmonious.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, really, I know you've got a lot of experience with people that have come to you with trouble. So the success stories are possibly people having picked up the patterns and then found the right person. I suppose it also applies to almost all relationships, close relationships, especially marriage. Because if you've got similar values, you're going to have a lot more alignment and a lot more goals that are aligned together. So, okay, well, let's talk about then the rest, or let's unpack that fundamental values. I thought it was important that you gave the decades of life. Let's look at mine. Mine, number 1 is spirituality. My second, love of learning. We've done a lot of work, personality profiles, strength finders. We've done a whole bunch of things, Lumina, Lemon Leadership, a whole bunch of things, Enneagram. We've really worked as coaches at Majors Thrive with corporates and clients, and looking at personalities plus values, getting people to write down those values, which is important. What about the decades? I thought that was probably a very, very interesting part of the book, to say, okay, in your 30s and your 40s and your 50s and your 60s and your 70s, unpack that concept of, just what you're going to be doing and the values that you have, based on your decades. So someone might have, say, in my 60s, I want to retire and play golf all day. And then, the other person's like, oh my goodness, no, we're going to be working in the city until the day we die. And that can cause significant conflict. So possibly unpack the decades that you've sort of put in the book.
So there's an exercise in the book where I'm asking the reader to define for himself or herself his or her fundamental values. And one of the ways that I ask the reader to do this is to look backwards at what was important throughout his or her life, what's important to him or her now, and then to sort of paint a picture and think about, where do you see yourself when you're 30? Where do you see yourself when you're 40? Where do you see yourself when you're 50? Where do you see yourself when you're 60? Because a lot of times we don't actually think about these things. We're just so focused on the stress of our job or whatever we're doing in the moment. And we're not really thinking about where we see ourselves in the future. But where we see ourselves in the future, although that may change, can offer some insight into what's really truly fundamentally important to us. And so in your example, somebody who wants to retire at 60 and be out playing golf, that might be somebody who fundamentally values I work to live, not live to work mentality, right? They might want a very comfortable lifestyle. They might value luxuries. They might value comfort. And so they need to find a partner who values similar things, as opposed to, as you said, a partner who says, no, we're going to live in the city forever and work until we're going to die at our desks. Those people are not going to be aligned, and there's going to be dissonance in their relationship down the road. And a lot of times, we get into these relationships and everything is great and everything's blissful and everything's wonderful, even if the fundamental values don't align. Then reality sets in, and life will always throw challenges and obstacles your way, whether you like it or not. That's the inevitability. And it doesn't really matter what your socioeconomic class is. Like, that's going to happen no matter what. And so I think that a telltale sign of a good relationship is not how good it is when things are good, but how well you work together when things aren't that great. And I think that, some people say, oh, relationships are so difficult. And I think they're not difficult. A good relationship should be very easy and should enhance your life. I mean, you'll have moments, of course, everyone has moments, but if you can actually navigate those obstacles together, like almost like you put on your armor, your shield, your sword, and you're fighting the dragon together, it can actually bring you closer and strengthen your bond. So that's, again, where those fundamental values and sharing those similar values is so important.
Sure. Well said. It's absolutely fascinating because, I got married at 23. Some of my own, friends and colleagues from medical school got married a bit later, but you don't think about, what you want to do in your 30s or 40s or 50s or 60s or 70s, and you pick a spouse and you haven't discussed a lot of these things, which is, like, I think, fundamentally important. I think that was a real highlight of the book. So well done to you. Let me give you an example in our marriage. Been married 23 years, got married very, very young, myself and my wife, and we've had a great marriage, been through some tough times of infertility, and it's been hard. But one of the biggest areas we didn't discuss was my wife's very strong value of safety. And so South Africa is a very dangerous country. Johannesburg, there's a lot of crime. And when we got married in 2000, it wasn't a huge issue. But then what happened is we had children, we had a son, and then eventually we had a daughter. But now things have changed, because now you've got children in a place that is not safe. And I'm like, we've got a mission, we've got a mandate here. My clinic's going well. I've been in practice 25 years. Things are really, really good. My corporate wellness business is going, and I'm happy staying here, and I can deal with the crime. And she's like, no, it's too much for our family. It's not safe. This is the current situation. Her perspective has changed. I mean, what would you say to us? I mean, now her brothers immigrated 20 years ago. Her folks immigrated last year. My folks immigrated all to Cyprus. Now we're sitting with a sort of a valued discrepancy or lack of alignment on safety. How do we work this one out, Sarah?
Well, again, I'm not a therapist. I'm not a marriage and family therapist. So I'm not, I would say that it's the sort of thing where, one of the other F words that I discuss in great depth in my book is foundation. And foundation, I liken to the foundation of a house. It consists of 5 pillars, which are trust, honesty, communication, respect, and teamwork. And these pillars need to all be intact in order for the relationship to be strong. And ideally, during the courtship, once you've established you share fundamental values, you're trying to build these pillars up so that you have a solid foundation to support your house, your relationship, for the duration of the relationship. The thing about these pillars is they can be knocked down. as the relationship progresses. They're not, just like a house. Sometimes they need to be retrofitted. Sometimes they're not sturdy. You need to fix them if they're fixable. And so you're constantly paying attention to these pillars throughout the course of the relationship. And it sounds like, and if the relationship is strong to begin with, if the foundation is strong to begin with, then if a pillar happens to wobble, it's very easily fixable, or you can patch it up. Whereas, if those pillars aren't necessarily sturdy to begin with, then you can just knock them down and the whole structure will topple. And so it sounds like, your marriage is built on a solid foundation. This issue about children, and, I devote an entire chapter in my book to talking about the ways that children impact a marriage and a relationship that people don't think about when they start dating, or what during their courtship, or when they get married. And I think that that's so important, because obviously we're not thinking about it, but yet it's a really indispensable piece of, or an indispensable consideration. So, if that foundation is strong and that communication pillar is solid to begin with, then I think that, communication, honesty, trust, teamwork, respect, all of these things, they're going to help you navigate certain conflicts and problems that come up in the relationship. This is why it's so important that the foundation exists in the first place, because it will, if you have the solid foundation, you're in a position to then deal with obstacles, deal with difficult situations as they come up. And so I think in your situation, obviously it's not easy, and it's not a black and white situation. It's not clear cut, but you both respect each other, so you can communicate in a respectful way and have a conversation and try to problem solve. And it's not going to necessarily impact the relationship, because you're going to, you have the strength of these pillars there.
So I know you, I think legally say, I'm not a therapist and I'm not licensed. I think obviously maybe that's just, I think, attorney talk, which is brilliant. But I mean, there you go. You've got an incredible grid. You've got an incredible filter system to put these 6 sort of pillars or F words that you put in the book. And you've just now gone from one foundational values, okay, different. Well, if we've got a difference in there that have developed for whatever reason, because of life or what, changes, or kids or country, well, then you got to like now lean on the other foundational pillar, which is your foundation, and looking at those things. So I think it's incredible, your book. I think also what I love about it is it's got a forecasting view to say, listen, you're not thinking about kids, but let's forecast when you do have kids. What do you want to do with them? How do you want to raise them? How do you want to parent them? Where do you want to live? What's going to happen? So there's a lot of sort of forecasting, picturing yourself in your 60s and saying, okay, well, where do we want to retire? Do we want to carry on working? I mean, these are things that young people often don't even consider. They don't even talk about the different stages and phases. And now you've been, these problems have come to you because you're an attorney dealing with divorce. And so now you've taken all these patterns. I call them algorithms, actually, algorithms that you can put in place, and then help people use these algorithms to predict the future and what would happen under certain circumstances.
Yeah, I'm seeing things down the road. I have this unique perspective because I get to see relationships once they've played themselves out, and I get to see where things went wrong. I stand in a very, very, special position where I get to hear people's stories, and they are, I have such tremendous respect for the vulnerability and the trust that they place in me. And, and I get to hear what happened in, how they're about their courtship. They want to tell me everything. They want to tell me where things went wrong, why they went wrong. And I hear this over and over and over. And well, every relationship is unique. Every person is unique. The patterns are unmistakably the same, always, time and time again. And so I have like the crystal ball to sort of see into the future and warn people, don't do this. And these are the things that are going to negatively impact your relationship down the road. So what can you do to avoid that before you get to that point? That's kind of the premise here. And that's where children really come into play, because As you said, people aren't thinking about children when they're dating, even when they're first getting married. Like, they might have discussed that they want to have children,
Exactly.
but they haven't discussed what faith they want to raise them in. Or if they haven't discussed, do I want to send them, in the States, private school or public school? Do I want to raise them eating extremely healthy foods and leading a healthy lifestyle? Or am I okay feeding them fast foods? Because there are a lot of people who disagree fundamentally on that. Am I okay? Do I want to make sure my children get all their vaccines, or am I adamantly opposed to vaccines? That's a huge one. And these are all things that people need to talk about, but also their fundamental values will give them clues and insight into whether or not they're going to want to raise their children in a similar way, or whether their children are going to be the cause of their divorce. Not because children cause divorces, but because children cause people to get divorced. They end bad relationships.
Yeah. Have you found that some people, just because of life and just the rat race of life and trying to, climb the corporate ladder or create wealth, they lose their values? And where couples said, geez, when we were first going out, we had a value of, going and being adventurous on holidays and adventurous in, our lives. And then, they got stuck in maybe trauma, or maybe they got stuck with not the job they wanted or the career they wanted, or something happened to a parent and they lose themselves. And then they come to you and they rediscover who they really are. Because a lot of people, they're not really living often authentic lives just because of what society has deemed, successful. And a lot of people don't unpack that word success and what it means. And I suppose that would be a very, very important question as I'm just talking to you. What does success mean to people in different stages and phases of their life? Because if people have a different view of that can cause significant conflict. But do some people sort of, find themselves again and just realize, hang on, I've left my authentic self compared to when we first got married?
I think that's a really profound point. And I think that it does happen. And this is, again, the reason that I think to identify your fundamental values is so important. Like, let me just give one example. And I talk about this in the book, but, when you're young and relatively carefree and there are few responsibilities, you might be an avid traveler. And your partner might also be an avid traveler. And this might be one of the things you really bond over, and you might travel fervently when you're young. And then you grow up and you have to get a job and you have to, make money to support your family and to live. And then you have children and you're literally unable to travel as much because it's more burdensome to do so. And so you stop traveling, or, you go on a little weekend getaway somewhere locally, but that's about it. And to me, when I give this example, I use it to illustrate that travel in and of itself might not be the fundamental value. It might be the underlying need inside of you that travel fulfills. Maybe it's to experience different cultures, and to immerse yourself in different cultures. And that's something that you have a thirst for and you're always looking to learn. It's like the educational component. Maybe there's an underlying need for adventure. And whatever form that manifests itself in, you're looking for adventure. And I think that identifying the underlying fundamental value, not always the way it manifests itself, but the underlying need that is being fulfilled by the thing that you value in that moment, will clue you into, what you need to feel fulfilled in life. So yes, sometimes responsibilities cloud we lose ourselves, right? We lose ourselves in our responsibilities and our work, all of these things. But if you come back to, okay, for example, let's say the need for travel fulfilled the sense of some sort of need for adventure. There are other ways that you can be adventurous, even when those responsibilities exist. And so part of this book and part of the importance of it, even just on a personal level is identifying things that you value on this deep level, and thinking about what you want for your life, so that you lead your life with more awareness. And so that if these times emerge where you feel like you've been completely bogged down by your job, you have the ability to self-reflect and pull yourself out of the mire and say, oh no, I need to redirect here because I'm not feeling fulfilled, but I know what I need to make me feel fulfilled. So yes, it's a book about finding meaningful relationships, but it's also a book about getting to know yourself in many ways.
Very powerful, Sarah. And, I just think of one of the guests I had, a lady called Jaya, who wrote an erotic blueprint and looking at sexual archetypes and just understanding what type of sexual being you are. And, just like you got the 5 love languages and how you show love, how you receive love, how you express yourself sexually, and how important that is. Because so you could be the very sexual type and someone's the kinky type or the shapeshifter. And, that just means, you might have a lot of conflict because you just thought, hang on, this person is very different, or this is their value, or this is how they express themselves sexually. So I think profoundly important. Let's move on to your second F, fear, and then we'll run through the rest and just unpack that for us in terms of the importance of finding a spouse, and also maybe put in the context of dating, because people are going to be listening here and thinking, geez, I'm not married yet, or I'm potentially got a future marriage partner. And, this dating process has been sort of very different to when I dated like 25 years ago. But I think put it in context, the pillars and the F sort of categories with regards to dating as well.
Sure, absolutely. So, we touched upon 2 of the F words already. So the other one is, another one is fear. And I think that fear is the number one reason that people get into the wrong relationship and stay in that relationship. Fear is the reason that we are afraid to leave a relationship because we think we might not find someone better. We think, maybe for women, they think, oh, my biological clock is ticking. I'm getting older. What if I don't meet somebody else? Okay, this person is good enough. Maybe all of your friends are getting married. You feel like you're left behind. Well, okay, this person is fine. They're here. We get along. We have a good time. Okay, I'll stay. There's so many reasons that fear infiltrates our conscience and talks us out of leaving a relationship that we know that we should intuitively. I think our intuition is such a powerful tool, and we often shush it and tell it to go away because we know that if we have to listen to it, then the next step that follows is an inconvenient one. And we don't want to do that. We don't want to end the relationship. And I don't blame people. I really don't. I mean, that's why I ended up in my first marriage. I was afraid, I wouldn't meet anyone else. Or, I didn't really have, I was so young. I was 17 when I met my ex-husband. I didn't really have much experience to draw on. And so, I didn't know anything else. And so that was scary to think, okay, well, I found someone great. I have a great time with him and he's awesome. And so why would I look for something else? Yeah. But I did know intuitively that it was wrong. And I still went through with it. And I think, a lot in talking to a lot of my clients on the other end of things, a lot of them admit to having known, and they ask me, how can I trust myself to find another relationship in the future if this one failed? And, if I made the wrong decision this time around. But in the same breath, they'll tell me, oh, I kind of saw the red flags. I should have known that. I'm like, you have every reason to trust yourself. You knew, you just ignored your intuition, but that doesn't mean that you didn't know. I think you should applaud yourself for having such a wonderful intuition that confirmed exactly what ended up happening. So, to those people who are 19, 20, in their early 20s, early 30s, looking for a relationship, or they're in a relationship and maybe they're not certain, or maybe they're in a relationship but they think they're certain, but their intuition is telling them otherwise. Listen to your gut, because your gut is usually right. And yes, it is going to be very difficult, painful to end a relationship that you like. scary to not know whether you'll find someone better. I think you will, but all of these things are true, but it is a lot scarier and more painful to go through a divorce. And that is the road you are headed down if you're in the wrong relationship.
Oh, wonderful, wonderfully said. And I think that's crucially important. So when it comes to sort of fear that you might not find someone else, do you recommend younger people or people that are looking to find a partner or a spouse should, socialize a lot more with different types of partners and really experience different people just to see what they like or don't like? Or do you think they should just get your book and say, let's do all the exercises? And I want to just, really acknowledge all the exercises are very powerful. It makes it very practical. So well done. But do you think they should really date a lot of people and, see where people are at, ask these questions of the people that they possibly want to get involved emotionally with?
I think, yes, my book definitely guides people to being more selective or knowing who to select and who, if a first date is great and fun, and then you go on a second date and you go on a third date because you're having a great time and you're not really viewing that date with the critical lens that you should be viewing it with, then it may ultimately lead to a relationship and not one that is necessarily right. So I think that, yes, reading the book and doing the exercises will help you identify which date you should pursue a second date with, and which one you should say, you know what, I had a lovely time. I just don't think we have that much in common, or we're right for each other. Have a nice life. You're wonderful. We're just not right for each other. I think it helps you make that decision a lot faster. And so then you don't get emotionally invested. Once you're emotionally invested, it's much harder. The fear creeps in then, and that's the problem. That's why people stay. So I think that is very important. Do I think dating a lot of people is key or important? I think practice always is great. I think experience is always great. But again, if you're just doing it sort of aimlessly, I don't think it's very productive. If you're dating a lot of people and you're thinking about the things like, do we share fundamental values? How is our communication? How is our ability to work together as a team here? What do we respect one another? All of these things you're thinking about them as you're going through it. Then you're going to be able to start to gravitate toward people who are right choices. They may not be the right choice, but you're kind of in the ballpark, as opposed to just indiscriminately dating a bunch of people. And you learn from all dating, I think. But I think you're gonna be a lot more successful if you're proactive about it.
Fantastic. So let's go through the other F's of fixing family and fairy tale.
Yeah. Again, in no particular order, fairy tale is this notion that getting married is the end all be all, the engagement, the proposal, the wedding dress, the party. It's all, this is what it's about. And if you think that your wedding day, and this is a very unpopular thing I'm going to say, sorry to those who feel offended by it, maybe you should ask yourselves why you're offended by it, but if your wedding is not the best day of your life. It can be a great day. It could be a wonderful day. It could be the best party of all time. It is not important in the grand scheme of things, because if the wedding itself is more important than the thing it purports to celebrate, you're headed down a very dangerous path. The thing that the wedding purports to celebrate should be the most important thing, and that is who you choose to be your life partner, and that wedding should celebrate that. But people, and they romanticize having children, they romanticize the wedding. And if that's the pinnacle, if that's like your peak, your wedding day, well, there's a whole lifetime that ensues after that. And that's going to be disappointing if you think that this is the best day of your life. So disabuse yourself of this notion that the goal is to get to the wedding. The goal is to get to the right relationship with the right person.
Mm.
And if your goal is to get to the wedding, then any person will fit the bill so long as you get to the wedding with that person. That doesn't guarantee a lifelong of, a meaningful, fulfilling relationship for your life.
Yeah, that's powerful, because a lot of people just place so much emphasis on that. And, I think Hollywood has sort of done a disservice to how the glamour regarding the fairy tale and the wedding and all the, you're the bride and all this sort of special attention on you, which can cause a lot of problems. But maybe if your value is just this sort of romantic fairy tale, then you can still experience that in marriage at a later stage.
I think if that's your value, if you're so focused on romanticism and the romantic and the fair, these, what we call them, the chick flicks, I think that, again, you're setting yourself up for disappointment, because it's nice to like those things. It's nice to escape, but you need to understand that they're fantasy and they're not reality. And if you perceive them as reality, then you're going to be very disappointed, because they're not really indicative of how real life is. So, it's fine to like them and to feel all warm and fuzzy about the romantic notions that they portray, but you have a brain and you're intelligent and you're able to differentiate between what is real and what isn't. And you can enjoy something because it's a fantasy, because it takes you away, because it's an escape. It's very different to expect that that's the way life is going to be, because we all know, we've lived life. We know that's not how life is.
Well
So
said, and straight to the point by the attorney. Nice and very direct, and making sure the point is made. And I think I've been overruled there. So beautiful. Well done, Sarah. Great. Let's go into fixing or family.
Yeah, sure. Fixing is a two-parter. So fixing is as it pertains to your partner. You cannot fix another person. You cannot. I have one of my favorite sayings, I'm very sarcastic in case anyone hasn't noticed, is wish in one hand and spit in the other and see which one fills up first. It's not the one you wish into. Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
So, if people can evolve, people can grow. A good relationship does force you to grow. It does bring out the best parts of you. That's great. That's so super different from fixing someone because you think that this person is flawed. If you think that someone is flawed in the initial phase of a relationship, when everybody is putting their best foot forward and everyone is trying to be the best versions of themselves. And, we all know that as the relationship progresses, people feel more comfortable to be who they really are. They may get a little bit more complacent. There's less impetus there to change. And you shouldn't want to change somebody. If you don't accept this person for who he or she is, then it's not the right person for you. People aren't projects. They are whole people who have a lifetime of experiences and traumas and things that have shaped them into who they are. You are not going to fix them. So there's a lot of disappointment where people think, okay, yeah, I'm going to fix this person, or someone even promises, yeah, I'm going to change. I'm going to work on, I'm going to fix that. But if it's something really fundamental, okay, you can say, yeah, you know what? The way I dress is maybe not okay. It's not with the times. I'm going to work on my wardrobe. That's really superficial. But I mean, you're not going to change the essence of who someone is. You're not going to fix them. So stop trying. Don't think that if they need to be fixed, they're not right for you. On to the next. The other component of fixing is fixing yourself. We all are so unique, and part of what makes us beautiful is that we do have these past experiences and traumas and, all these things that have shaped us, and they're part of the fabric of who we are. There's a lot of hurt, there's a lot of growth, there's a lot of strength. That's all wonderful. That's very different from having issues that are unaddressed, that we then seek out a relationship where we can play out those issues or work through those issues. And then I'm going to call it a dysfunction for lack of a better word, but then the dysfunction is selecting the relationship. You're not selecting your partner, the dysfunction is selecting it. And so it's really important that you go into a relationship having fixed yourself, having first addressed your own issues, how, oh, I didn't speak to my mother for 20 years. I'm still not speaking to her. I hate her. She abandoned me. Okay. That happens to a lot of people, very unfortunately. And it's an awful thing. And it's an awful feeling. But unless you address, maybe through some, therapeutic modality or whatever you need to do to address how that impacted you, how that made you feel, how that influences your selection in partner, right? Are you picking a partner only because you know that this person will never, ever leave you, and that security that that partner offers you is more valuable than anything else, even if the person is totally wrong for you? Then you need to work on that abandonment issue first, so that you're not selecting any partner because this person won't leave you, but you're selecting the right partner because this person is caring and understanding of what you've gone through, but also pushes you and, shares your fundamental values and is so much more and will enrich your life. So, it's kind of two parts there with fixing.
Brilliant. I think, and I think I hear that commonly, from patients and clients about someone trying to fix you or change you. Don't worry, when we get married and they've been with me for a long time, they'll become more like me and I'll change them. So I think that's very tricky to sort of start a relationship like that. Okay, then great. The last one, family, Sarah.
Family, just, as we here in the United States approach Thanksgiving, this is a big one. So family, it sort of manifests itself in many different forms. If someone is close to his or her family, right? The family is going to be a part of your lives when you're together, when you're married, whether you like that or not. And so do you get along with the family? Does the family approve of and get along with you? I've seen so many relationships fall apart because the family didn't approve of the other spouse, and the other spouse always felt inadequate, judged, and it put a tremendous strain on the relationship. And ultimately, it was one of the big reasons that the relationship fell apart. Conversely, do you like the family? I analogize family to the corner piece of the puzzle, the one that kind of orients you, and then you figure out where to put the rest of the pieces based on that corner piece. It's kind of like you're pulling back the curtain, you're getting VIP access to learn more about the person who you're dating and to kind of understand about their past, about their fundamental values, right? Family is very integral in instilling our fundamental values in us, right? What are they like? Do you like them? Can you handle being around them? Then there's the absence of family, which can shape us even more so than the presence of family, right? Why doesn't your partner get along with his or her family? Why is the family absent? Are the family just a horrible bunch of narcissists who've abandoned this person and caused him or her a lifetime of pain and feelings of inadequacy and feeling unlovable? And has this person fixed? And when I say fixed, they're never fixed, but like, has this person worked on those issues coming into the relationship? So it's a little kind of clue as to what's going on with the partner. And it's not necessarily a reason to end the relationship. It just should be like a little like aha moment. I need to watch for this. I need to watch how this plays out. Has this person addressed these issues? Is this person selecting me because he or she's trying to play out the issues that they had with their family through this relationship with me? Do I stand in the role of mother to this person because he or she feels that he was abandoned by his mother or her mother? I don't want to stand in that role. That's not a healthy relationship either, right? So just kind of cluing you in to the person. And then, family also could mean, someone might not have necessarily, a mother or father might have passed away, or other relatives might have stood in the place of parents, their siblings, right? Family is kind of a very large concept. It could be close friends who've taken on the form of family, right? The role of it. And so, kind of just looking at the whole family in general and using it to clue you into more about this person. I think it's just, but literally, like, families destroy marriages. So
I'm sure you've seen that in your legal practice, where families had significant effect on the marriage and cause significant problems.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And, and if you don't like your partner's family, but you both fundamentally value family, well, family is going to be a part of your lives. And here's the thing, if, like, let's say I fundamentally value family, and let's say my husband fundamentally values family, that's great. But if I don't like my husband's family and he fundamentally values family,
yeah,
it's going to cause a rift between us when I am not valuing his family, but I'm valuing my own.
Yeah, that's powerful.
So that's also something to, really consider.
Yeah, often we've done a lot of pre-marriage counseling within our church community, and that we look at family genograms and having a look at just these patterns within the family. And because I think that's very important to understand, your family values and your family strengths and shadows at the same time. So great. We're almost coming to the end of the show. Just two things that I'd like to ask more is about second marriages. Do they have the same divorce rate? Number one.
I am not sure on that statistic. That's a great question. I have heard, and I wouldn't quote me on this, but I've heard that second marriages are more likely to end in divorce if you've been divorced the first time. That has not been my experience in what I've seen. I've seen that people actually learn so much from having gone through their first marriage that they end up much more critically approaching their second marriage. And so they find a very fulfilling relationship and the correct partner. That has been my experience, just in observation. But I think that was the statistic that I heard, and I'm not 100% certain on that.
Maybe we can get that in the show notes, because I think then your book would be really applicable for people that have gone through a divorce and then looking for a spouse or partner. I think that would be important. And then the last question is, it seems like marriage has to be a value, because some people are just getting married because it's the social thing to do. And that causes a lot of issues. And obviously, you being an attorney, once you sign those papers, those marriage papers, it's really important. Do you see the new generation, the Gen Zers, and not getting married and sort of living in sort of a communal spouse relationship rather than getting married? Or how do you see the future sort of panning out with this covenant or contract of marriage?
I do think younger people are moving away from the traditional notion of marriage. They view it as a piece of paper. That's not necessarily my view, but then again, I'm not a younger person. So, I think that, and some states in the United States, every state has different laws. Some are actually, they have common law marriage. So if you've lived together for long enough, you're just considered marriage or married, and you're held to the same standard as married persons. California, where I'm at, it doesn't have, there's no common law marriage. But I think that, regardless of whether or not you need a piece of paper and you think that piece of paper means something or it doesn't, when you commit your life to someone and you make the conscious choice to do that in whatever form that may be, you still need to be looking for the same things. And so if some people might say, I never want to get married, and they should find someone who also says, yeah, I never want to get married. But saying I never want to get married is not the same as saying, oh, I don't want to commit to someone for life, right? I know plenty of people who are in relationships committed for life. Very clearly, they just don't want to get married. They don't believe in that institution. So if you happen to be one of those people who doesn't necessarily believe in marriage, You still should be looking for a partner who wants to mate for life. And that's something that you need to ascertain from the get-go, because otherwise you're going to be sorely disappointed when, you try to build a life together, and maybe you do build a life together, and then that person's like, oh, well, I never thought this was forever. Right. So I think it's important to make that distinction and to be upfront. That's the thing about relationships, and that's part of the pillars of foundation and all that. It's like honesty engenders trust, right? Honesty, communication engenders trust, right? When you're in a relationship, trust is so foundational. Literally, it is one of the foundational pillars. And the communication and the respect. And so you need to be communicating. You need to be upfront. The worst thing you can do is pretend to be someone you're not. Pretend to be, like put your best foot forward, present the best version of yourself, present the real version of yourself. Because if somebody doesn't like that, they're not the right person for you.
No, it's true, but a lot of people are so scared. They're full of fear that if they actually reveal themselves, they won't be accepted, firstly, they won't be loved, and they won't be valued, which I think are the essence of, our humanity: acceptance, love, and significance and value. So, but Sarah, just last message of hope for people listening out there with regards to marriage and with regards to, your 6 F's pillars that are so important, because I think there's a lot of people that are living in despair. They've been hurt, they're divorced, they don't see hope. I know that COVID has isolated a lot of people. People don't value relationships like they did before, or they've just been isolated for so long. They're not going out there and creating social circles like before. So a message of hope from holistic family attorney who's reverse engineered the process because has seen so much pain, so much nastiness, so much ugliness, and trying to prevent that, which I think is incredible. So let us know.
My message of hope. I think that there is someone out there for everyone. I think that you need to accept that you are a lovable person who is worthy of being in a relationship, and that the right person is out there. It's not necessarily easy to find that person, but if you really do the work and you figure out what you want, you will attract that, because you will have a very clear sense of what it is you're looking for, rather than kind of aimlessly meandering through the dating pool. The more clarity you have, the more convicted you feel in what it is you want, and your sense of self-worth, it will find you.
Sure. Wow. Thank you for that message. Incredible. And this is Sarah Intelligator, who's written an incredible book called Live, Laugh, Find True Love, a step-by-step guide to dating and finding a meaningful relationship. I want to say thank you for your courage, your calling. I declare favor and blessing over you. And if I can get a copy, a hard copy from your publisher, we can do some social stuff with that, really try and promote the book as much as we can, because I think it's very important. Like I said, I've got a 19-year-old son. This is a book that I want him to read, because he's going to be looking, and he's, although stuck in business, I know there's going to be a time he's going to be looking for a partner and a spouse. So thank you so much, and really appreciate it.
That means a lot to me. Thank you so much.